TomoNews presents Whales.
A morning surf at Sydney's Bondi Beach nearly turned very bad for one daring man after a large southern right whale came a little too close and knocked him out cold with the slap of its tail. The whale was swimming near a group of surfers about 70 metres from the shore. Vishan Rajapakse was closest to the 15-metre whale when it approached the surfers. Without warning, the animal's tail lifted out of the water and came right down on Rajapakse's head, knocking him out. Other surfers were tossed around by the animal's power. Friends pulled the helpless man from the water moments later. He was treated for shoulder injuries and a concussion, but otherwise unhurt.
Whales can be very aggressive animals if they feel very threatened. I would say this person's very lucky to not have sustained more serious injuries.
Aussie idiot sadly does not get eaten by sharks. Harrison Williams and friends were on a boat enjoying the waters off Western Australia over the weekend when they noticed something very large bobbing up and down in the water, which turned out to be a several-week-old dead whale. Now, you or I might find such a sight a rare and interesting addition to your weekend, but Williams is into extreme sports, and this 26-year-old thought it would be totally rad if he swam over and surfed on the whale corpse. And so he did, much to the delight of his immature friends. But then Williams looked down and noticed about a gazillion humongous hungry sharks, including a great white or two, enjoying some decaying whale sashimi. Finally, in his only sane act of the day, Williams wisely got his friends to rescue him with the boat, narrowly avoiding a Darwin Award nomination.
Great white sharks being hunted by killer whales. Great white sharks are widely seen as the ocean's most feared predator, but 3 separate incidents of their carcasses washing ashore in South Africa this past month would suggest that they too have something to fear: orca whales. Marine scientists dissecting these great whites have observed a fascinating pattern. The bodies, each wrought with orca bites, are missing the shark's liver. The organs were removed with almost surgical precision, offering us new understanding about the hunting behaviors and capabilities of the killer whale. Great white sharks traverse the ocean as solitary creatures, but orca whales, referred to as the wolves of the sea, are often known to hunt as a pod. When hunting sharks, orca whales use their powerful tails to create strong underwater currents from below, forcing unsuspecting great whites to the surface. The whale then stuns its prey. It then lifts its tail out of the water and swings down with tremendous force, unleashing a fatal blow. The great white shark's liver holds a high concentration of squalene, a steroid and hormone-producing compound attractive to killer whales. South Africa's recent influx of great white shark carcasses absent of a liver is leading scientists to believe the whales may be relaying this hunting strategy amongst their pod. The researchers think the sharks may have now become of interest to the orcas because their typical food sources are diminishing from pollution and climate change. In the 5 years prior to these findings, only 4 great white shark carcasses had washed ashore in this particular region.
Want to see what happens when a whale is having a really crappy day? These pictures come to us from diver Kerry Wilk, who got caught up in the underwater shitstorm off the coast of the Dominican Republic. He and 3 other divers had planned an epic day of swimming with a pod of sperm whales in what he describes as, quote, the most crystal clear Caribbean blue water you can imagine. Unbeknownst to them, though, that water was about to get a lot murkier thanks to Doo-Doo the whale here, whose stomach was on the fritz. The animal dropped what is probably the most massive deuce ever recorded on video, covering about 100 meters in all directions with its stank on ya. Wilkes says it got in his eyes and mouth. It was everywhere. Once clear of the poo-nado, the clear ocean water washed it away. He still took an extra long shower though, just in case.
The sad life and dark times of Tilikum the orca whale. On January 6th, the world's most famous whale passed away. SeaWorld announced that Tilikum the orca whale has finally died due to complications from a bacterial lung infection he'd been ailing from. Tilikum's health had been in decline for a few months, but the suffering he endured as a captive orca whale lasted for more than 3 decades. In 1983, then 2-year-old Tilikum was captured off the coast of Iceland, ripped from his family and taken to a marine zoo. A year later, Tilikum was then transferred to Sealand of the Pacific, a former marine park in Canada's British Columbia. Forced to learn tricks and perform for audiences regularly, it didn't take long for Tilikum to become aggressive toward humans. In 1991, 20-year-old part-time trainer Kelty Byrne was working with Tilikum and 2 other whales when she slipped into the pool. As she struggled to get out of the tank, the whales reportedly prevented her from doing so. Tilikum supposedly carried the young girl's dead body around on his back for the next 2 hours before staff were able to retrieve her. After Sealand of the Pacific closed down the next year, Tilikum was then sold to SeaWorld Orlando for $1 million. There, too, the 1,200-plus pound whale was kept in a small tank built to hold only 1/10,000th of the water an orca would normally traverse over a day in the wild. Experts say these conditions can lead to psychosis for the whales, and it wasn't long before Tilikum struck again. In 1999, a 27-year-old drifter named Daniel Dukes had somehow snuck into the park and dove into a breeding tank to go skinny dipping with the whale. The next morning, in a familiar sight, Dukes' body was found draped across Tilikum's back. The death was reported as a likely drowning, but that wouldn't explain all the injuries Dukes suffered. His body was covered in abrasions, and his genitals had reportedly been bitten off. Tilikum's murderous streak culminated in 2010, when SeaWorld trainer Dawn Brancheau was pulled down into the pool during a live performance and held down until she drowned. Her body was later recovered with her left arm and part of her scalp ripped off. Brancheau's death was the focus of the 2013 acclaimed documentary Blackfish, which exposed SeaWorld's treatment of its orca whales and nearly sunk the company following an extreme public backlash. In response to the film, SeaWorld has since halted its captive breeding program and announced it would be phasing out its theatrical orca shows. In a statement, SeaWorld mourned the loss of Tilikum and noted the world-class care provided to him, and that he lived a long and enriching life while at SeaWorld. Rest in peace, Tilly. Hopefully, you're swimming through an endless ocean heaven with plenty of fish to eat. No more tricks for you, big guy.
Paddleboarder's GoPro captures killer whale close encounter. After hearing about some orcas just down the beach, a man in New Zealand thought it would be a good idea to paddleboard 200 meters offshore towards the group of the giant black and white marine mammals that are known to feast on other mammals and whose nickname highlights their capacity to kill. There was a moment there where the whale, after briefly checking the man out, decided to go for a little sampler. Little damage was done though, fortunately. The encounter remained friendly, and it seems the orca was merely curious about the paddleboarder. After a few more seconds checking the paddleboarder out, the orca swam back and joined the other orcas, diving for stingrays. The paddleboarder held his cool throughout the encounter, later admitting he was just a tad nervous during his brush with one of the world's most skilled predators.
Japanese ship caught with dead whale in Australian sanctuary. Despite its whaling program having been ruled illegal by the International Court of Justice in 2014, Japan continues to antagonize the global community with its despicable practices. On January 15th, conservation organization Sea Shepherd posted these disturbing photographs of a dead minke whale aboard the Nishin Maru, the primary vessel of Japan's whaling fleet. As the Japanese fleet traveled through the Australian whale sanctuary in the Southern Ocean, the ships must have caught sight of the whale and killed it. They weren't as covert as they needed to be, because a Sea Shepherd helicopter spotted the whale's carcass lying on the fencing deck of the Nishin Maru. Realizing they were exposed, the crew of the whaler factory ship tried to cover its tracks, spreading a blue tarp over the body of the dead whale. The fleet's harpoon ships then quickly followed suit, covering their deadly weapons in the hopes that the world might never know. Animal activists can thank Sea Shepherd for their tireless efforts to reveal Japan's slaughtering of these massive, majestic creatures, for which the country consistently maintains is for scientific research. The discovery of the unlawful whaling comes just a day after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe met with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull in Sydney. This is the first dead whale seen since Japan was ordered to end its Antarctic hunt, when the ICJ concluded that the scientific research being conducted was illegitimate.
Humpbacks interrupt orca pod's feeding frenzy. You never know what you might find when flying a drone over the ocean, but on May 1st, a group of marine biologists managed to capture this amazing footage of a pod of orcas trying to devour a gray whale carcass, but getting interrupted by a couple of uninvited dinner guests, 2 humpback whales. The orca pod has reportedly been on a killing spree in Monterey Bay over the past 2 weeks, targeting gray whales. 7 whale casualties recorded so far is oddly high for such a short time span, which caught the attention of the scientific community. The orca's blood spilling has also captured the attention of the 60 to 70 humpback whales in the area who've migrated early this year. Watch carefully and you'll see the humpbacks disrupting the orcas during mealtime. Orcas are the main predators of gray whales, but humpbacks have no interest in the prey, leading experts to wonder what their motives might be for pissing off their rivals. A show of altruism, perhaps, to protect the gray whales? Some experts suggest this behavior is more likely to be an instinctual attack response, given that orcapods often go after humpback whale calves. Or maybe the humpbacks are just jerks at the underwater cafeteria, jocks pushing food trays off the geek tables. Who knows? Whatever the reasoning, these whale wars going on off the California coast right now are probably doing wonders for the state's whale watching tour industry. Ah, nature.
How whales became the biggest animals on the planet. Whales are among the most enormous life forms to traverse the Earth. In fact, blue whales happen to be the largest animal to have ever graced this planet. Roughly 50 million years ago, whales were previously hoofed mammals on land, still evolving to become creatures of the oceans. Over the following 20 to 30 million years, some developed the unique ability to filter feed, consuming colossal quantities of food. But it wasn't until about 4.5 million years ago that whales of several different breeds started popping up as the massive beings we see today. From studying 140 fossilized whale specimens and noting the climate patterns taking place during the time of this whale growth explosion, researchers at the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of Natural History believe they've pinpointed the environmental conditions that set the stage for the birth of these underwater giants. Their findings were published on May 23rd in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B. In the midst of the Pleistocene era, nutrients such as iron entered the water by means of runoff from glaciers in the northern hemisphere. Meanwhile, wind-driven upwelling cycles forced cold water to the surface, along with a plethora of organic material. The nutrient-rich waters drew in tons upon tons of zooplankton and krill, practically forming underwater walls of whale food stretching for miles. These gatherings took place seasonally, demanding whales travel far distances between feedings. Only the most massive whales had the fuel to make the trips, while the smaller ones eventually died off. Altogether, these dynamic processes allowed whales to grow from the size of minivans to greater than the length of 2 school buses in a relatively short period of time. According to interviews conducted by the New York Times, the study is garnering wide recognition from the scientific community for helping us better understand whale evolution while offering further evidence to support current findings about the shifts in our oceans throughout Earth's history.
Asshole humpback whale collides with jet skier. Amazing drone footage captures humpback whale slapping its tail.